And I would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Coos County. Hello, Oregon. Hello, America. East Coast, West Coast, and you'll find me right here, right on the southern coast of Oregon. And it just 20 minutes ago, I tell you, it just turned into a beautiful day. That sun has come out and it's looking fantabulous out there. I just want to let you know that I'm not sure if we're playing Where's 3H Tree Service yet. So I'm waiting for Matt Holman to jump in, give me a call. And if we're playing today, I will let you know. But right now, as far as I know, it's not a go. But that's okay because he was out earlier, way out in the middle of nowhere in Coos County, and none of you would have been able to find him. So, I think it's better that we waited anyway. So hopefully he'll give me a call. And I just want to let you know that I'll have some, I'm going to repeat this a couple of times through the show. We have a very important meeting tomorrow. The county commissioners are going to be voting on an advisory question for or against the windmills. They want to know what you voters of Coos County believe should happen with those windmills. Are you for them? Are you against them? Well, they're going to ask you that question. And why? Because it doesn't cost that much money to ask the question because the ballot's going to go out anyway. But it gives them a chance to find out what the people think. And the commissioners and all of us who are opposed to this horrendous windmill project, and then if they worked, we'd support it, but it just doesn't work. And it's really bad for the environment. It's bad for the animals. And so we're opposed to it. And the commissioners are opposed to it. I believe the commissioners of all three counties in our surrounding area, Douglas County, Curry County, and Coos, they're all opposed to it. And Curry is going to be deciding on Wednesday night whether to put the advisory question on the ballot. But Coos County is going to definitely, I believe, put the question on the ballot because you and a lot of people are going to be showing up. There's a lot of us who are tired of this BS and we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And the only way to make sure that happens is if we do show up for that meeting and we let them know exactly how we feel. And I've got a DA, an assistant DA coming from the east side of the state. He's actually coming all the way over. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Daniel Crow, but he's going to be here tomorrow to talk about the windmills to our commissioners. That's how much of an important issue it is. It's going to affect fishing. And, he likes seafood. What can I tell you? If you like seafood, this whole windmill project is a bad idea. So tomorrow at the Owen Building in Coquille at 9 o'clock, be there about 9 o'clock. It doesn't really start until about 9:30. And you can tell the commissioners, hey, look, we need a change. We need a break. And this windmill project just ain't for us here on the South Coast. And so I just want to let you know that. But I do want to tell you, me, I fight everyone who is not on the up and up. You know what I mean? And I don't like to say fight. I challenge them. I question them. I always question authority. And I am a registered Republican. I just registered, I think it was in May, I registered as a Republican. And it's not because I wanted to be a Republican. It was the only way I could get close enough to my political enemies to basically take some of them out and then reform the party. And that's what my goal is. My goal is now as a Republican is to take some of these SOBs out and to put better people in. And it's a long process. I know this. And people ask me all the time, Rob, is it worth it? I have no idea. I really don't know, because I'm not sure if there is a political solution. But those damn Republicans, you're not going to believe this. They're attacking a third party right now, the Libertarian Party. They're trying to get their candidates off the ballot. How do you like that? How do you like that as a voter, as someone who pays your taxes here in Oregon? You register to vote. You want to have as many choices as you can, because that's what America is all about, choices. And then the damn Republicans, in this crazy control freak way that they have a way about doing things. That's all political parties are like this. But the Republicans, because they're at the top tier of with the Democrats, they feel a need to keep others down, especially in third parties. Why? Because they don't like the challenge. They don't like people challenging them. That's why they have a problem with me. I challenge a lot of their candidates. I question them just as much as I question anyone else who's in politics, or more importantly, who's in a position of authority. So I've got a guest on who is running for the congressional district number 5. This is the U.S. House district. And she's coming on the show, and we're going to talk about, what the Republicans are doing and what she thinks about it, and maybe a few other things while we're at it. And if you want to ask questions during this interview, please feel free to post them on YouTube or on X, formerly known as Twitter. And joining me right now is Sonja Feintek. Hi. Did I pronounce that last name right?
You know what? Yeah. No one can pronounce it. It doesn't matter. I say Fintish. The rest of the family says Feintek. It's all good. And thanks for having me on again.
Is it Frankenstein or is it Frankenstein?
Yeah. I'm done correcting people.
Good for you. You're running for House District number 5, and I was looking at your YouTube page and what it was saying in the article that I had found that actually you had posted. And is this the U.S. House or is this the Oregon House?
It's U.S. House.
So you're going up against Remer.
Lori Chavez DeRemer and Janelle S Bynum.
Right.
I think there's another third party in there somewhere, but I haven't done it.
And there's 2 third parties. There's a Pacific Green and there's a Constitution Party member. And here's the thing. I couldn't find your PAC on the list. What's up with that?
We're not with Orstar because it's a federal filing. So we filed through the FEC. But I did just get notified. We took in our paperwork last week, and it just showed up on the website. So we are officially on there now.
On Orstar?
Mm-hmm, and I believe so. And we'll see how long.
Okay.
On there. I think, with the Secretary of State, the candidate filing search now shows up.
Okay, because they had the 4 other candidates, and I thought it may have been the timing with your convention. You guys just had the Libertarian Convention, didn't you?
Right, we did. Yeah.
Why is it so late?
Later. Multiple reasons. I'm not exactly sure. You can either do like mail-in ballots for people to fill out, and we didn't really have the finances for that, so we decided to hold a convention, and we went from there.
I'll have you know, Jonathan, he just commented. He says, hello from Washington County. Do you know Jonathan?
Hi, Jonathan. Yeah.
And let's see. He says, I'm not sure if the ORP isn't controlled by the Oregon Dems. You know, I often question the validity of that quite often. I often think, and you've been in this game a while, I often think that and I call them the uniparty. I think that if you get at a certain level, they all got rooms where they hang out at, and they're just organizing against us. And it's like one of those WWF wrestling matches. The guy owns both guys who are the wrestlers. He owns the rings. It's a script, and they know the script, and they come out and they act like it's a real wrestling match in front of an audience. And every 14-year-old boy in the world thinks it's great and it's real and it's happening. And I think that's what we're getting played. I think it's a wrestling match.
It's a big old club, and we ain't in it.
And we hate it. Thank you, George Carlin. Right. Yeah. He says, I'm with you on downing the ORP. And there's good reason to do that. All power corrupts. We all know power corrupts. And the ORP, they are craving the power because they haven't had it for so long. They're willing to sacrifice all of their principles, if they ever had any, but all their values so that they can actually win some of these elections. And part of the reason I think they're keeping the Libertarians out is that there are some really close Republican races that they know the Libertarian more than likely will pull from the Republican. And so is that your theory on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally convinced that the ORP isn't built to fail. They make a lot of money every time they run bad candidates, and they go out of their way to absolutely destroy the grassroots Republican candidates that people actually want. I saw it firsthand in the last gubernatorial race we had. The methods they use and the lengths they went to push out these candidates was disgusting. There was a lot of collusion with the Dems in those races. So they suck up a lot of money for the RNC. They get their people put up in high leadership. I know that this is a big fissure in the party. This is my race, at least. There's also District 4. There's a Libertarian candidate running against Monique Spain, I believe. These are both nationally recognized battleground races. And that's prime territory for a third party to jump in when either of the candidates running aren't issuing the principles of liberty. And we want better. And so we can jump in because we only need to take about 2% to affect massive change, to put pressure on parties that are not serving their people. And here in Oregon, each state's a little bit different. With the Libertarian Party, it seems to be we are a bit of a response. So when you have a democratically held state, the Libertarians tend to lean much more to the right, much more conservative. And then in red states like Texas, the Libertarian Party leans a bit to the left. But still, the principles of being anti-war and anti-taxation and deregulation, they stay the same.
I started out as an activist as a young man, getting involved because I watched a huge swath of my generation going to jail because they smoked pot. And I know Republicans always say, oh, no one went to jail for smoking pot. Well, that's funny. I can name you at least a dozen people who have gone to jail who smoked pot. And so it just ticks me off when they say that. But in New Mexico, we had a great governor. You probably will recognize the name. His name was Governor Gary Johnson. I was an advisor to Gary Johnson because I was the liaison between the Libertarians and the Republican Party. And we were actually gaining ground with the Republicans because the Republicans at the time held the House and they held the Senate in New Mexico. And it was the Democrats we were fighting, and they felt that they had a need to be tough on crime. It was like Joe Biden and the laws that he has passed against guns, against criminals, nonviolent criminals, who aren't criminals at all. But it was funny how we were working with the Republicans and working against the Democrats. And it was just a very frustrating situation because they were the ones who were supposed to be socially liberal, right? This is Democrats. Democrats get high, they party. Well, I got news for you: Republicans get high and party too. They just don't film it as much. And so that's why when I got involved and I got it working with many of these people down the road, I found myself as a libertarian aligning a lot of times more with the Republicans, especially, I'll give you an example, the border issue. The border issue is one of those that really gets me aligned with the Republicans. But and I also liked being with a party who, if you could change the party, it was a good thing because they were winning. Libertarians weren't winning. And it's very frustrating, but I think in this system, and they keep calling it a two-party system. There is no two-party system. That's made up, and it's nowhere in the Constitution that says we're a two-party system. In fact, our founding fathers, they really didn't want political parties because they knew we were going to be devolved into factions. And that's why I think the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, and the Green Pacific Party, even the Socialists and the Commies, when they have their parties, it's a necessary evil because you have to have that counterbalance against the Republicans and the Democrats.
Right. And we can bridge the gap and we can give them alternative. And in highly contested races such as this one, we can just give a different option for people to look at things a little bit differently and offer a different message on liberty and information that people don't normally have access to.
This letter went to the Secretary of State, and it wasn't focused on your race or any specific race. It was it said that they wanted to challenge the legitimacy of any libertarian candidate, and all of them should be disqualified. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, all of us, just like the whole slate. Basically, they want to send the Libertarian Party into existential crisis. They want us to, saying that everything that we've done is in violation of our bylaws. But this is also an issue from 11, 12 years ago. And I don't know like super deep bylaw language. That's not my thing. But I do know that many people regard this, including our national party, as settled. Like we're good to go. And there's certainly things to fix in our bylaws, but not enough to completely kick us out of the entire race, which is meddling on a huge level. And it just makes them look bad. It makes them
look petty.
And they're only doing it now. They could have done it. They could have tried to challenge us anytime. And there was a challenge a few years back, not directly from the ORP, but kind of supported by them, kind of testing the waters. And that got thrown out because there was no standing. But this is because of these races. And we know from some information from other sources that it's specifically about District 4 and 5, my district.
And it's all, there are, I don't know how many, and I didn't check how many libertarians are running in any, if there are any running in the very close races for the Oregon House. Do you have any candidates who are running for the state house itself?
Ooh, I would need to look. Hopefully someone on my team writes me and tells me, because I'm just aware of the U.S. representative races right now.
Okay.
We have a good slate of nominees, though.
Well, because they have a Constitution Party, and especially this is for your district I'm talking about, because they have a Constitution Party and they have a Pacific Green, if it would have been just the Libertarian Party and the Constitution Party wasn't there, you probably wouldn't have been targeted. But because they don't want the Constitution Party and the Libertarians in there, because they know that the majority of the people who are Libertarians and who are Constitutionalists would probably siphon most of the votes from the Republicans.
Right. Yeah. The Pacific Green typically pulls from the left a little bit. Constitution Party definitely pulls from the right. Libertarians here in Oregon pull from the right.
Timothy Perkins said there are several candidates running for state house as well as state senate. So this is, I believe that, they definitely are probably targeting 4 and 5, but there are probably a few very close house races. And the word was I went to the Republican convention. It was held here in Coos County at the Mill. And I'm like the black sheep of the family. You know, I'm the redheaded stepchild. And so that's okay. I grew up as a redheaded stepchild. I can take a beating. And so the word was we got to do everything possible to cut those odds, because there were a lot of Republicans in the last election who lost by as little as 200 to 400 votes. Mm-hmm. And so they're terrified if they get a libertarian in there, and they know that a lot of people are ticked off at the Republican Party, that it could really skew the odds and pull a lot of votes from, or enough votes from the Republican to cost them that election again. And they're spending a lot of money on this. Mm-hmm. So you guys are doing some damage. And once again, I don't really think that's a bad thing, because you're offering people a choice, which is what we need. In the more choice, the more freedom you have. And you're costing a party that's acting petty right now. They're acting petty. This is the worst thing they can do, is to go after a third party candidate, because there are Republicans, and I know these Republicans, who the reason they stay Republicans is they want to reform the party as well. And they're watching this and they're thinking the same thing that I am. This is really petty. This may cost even more support for the Republicans, because people don't want to be involved with a party or be a member of a party who's going to attack others. And basically, again, I keep using that filler word, I shouldn't. They are acting like the Democrats.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the same game.
So, what have you had any response from the Secretary of State on this yet?
I don't believe so. I mean, I just filed, and all of our candidates just filed this last week. They said it was going to take a little bit longer. There was going to be some delays, which we took as they were looking into this letter, basically. But this morning, it just showed up. So I'm officially filed. So the move now would be for the ORP to do something crazy, like sue our entire party. So we're kind of just waiting for that now.
Which will cost you money too, as well, I presume.
It will. Yeah, it will.
That's just ludicrous. I'm if I sound a little distracted, I'm checking that. Yay, you are there. Yes, Sonja, you are there. I was watching this last night going, oh gosh, I hope she shows up.
Oh.
So this makes me happy. And that actually kind of is a sign of how the Secretary of State is going to rule, or I shouldn't say rule, but their opinion on this. Their opinion will probably be, you guys have been doing this for 11 years. That's precedence. You've had, I don't know how many candidates since 11 years ago, and there's no reason to stop this now. And they're going to rule against the Republicans in this. That's what I believe.
There's already been a precedent set that the Secretary of State doesn't get involved in party bylaw issues. So my guess is that they'll stay out of it and say, we don't have jurisdiction. This is not our problem. And so then it'll be in the ORP's hands if they want to sue our party, which would be a mistake. Now, the nice thing is that all five of you who are running in that position, you are, there's three from third parties, the two major parties, a Democrat and a Republican. But the real story is that probably a lot of people don't know, the largest number of registered voters are the non-affiliated voters. Yeah.
I miss being non-affiliated. In fact, I love that term. I'm just non-affiliated with anybody. It's just me, not affiliated. And those are the people you're going to have to win over. And once again, it seems to me like this is a huge misstep by the Republicans, because once this hits the news, anyone on the fence that was a nav is going to look at the Republicans and go, you're a bunch of titty babies. I'm going to give the Libertarian my vote in spite of you. Don't you think that could happen?
Right. No, that's typically what happens. Navs really don't like infighting. They don't like division. They don't like the party politics. That's why they don't pick a party. So now all we have to do is highlight that we're being attacked by an entire party with a huge amount of money and, the machine behind them. And we're just, little libertarians just showing up to give people a choice, and they want to stop us. Oh, okay. This is going to be great. Thanks, guys.
This is going to be great. And I've got really good news to share with you. They do have a lot of money, but the gentleman that I supported against a senator who used his power to get me kicked off the radio, the Republicans, they bitch about cancel culture until they use it themselves. And for some reason, that's okay. But I supported a man by the name of Todd Vaughn, and he was recalled off the executive committee in Douglas County. That's how bad it was. Just the fact he had me working on his campaign, he got recalled. And there were Republicans who were saying, we don't even want a primary. We're only going to start endorsing our incumbents. I was just blown away by this. Can you believe this?
Just do that with Biden, And the DNC was mad, like all the Democrats were mad about that they weren't going to allow nomination. I mean, obviously it's different now, but like how hypocritical.
Oh yeah, we just went through a coup. I mean, it was a literal coup where the vice president, with backing from Barack Obama's people, probably some of Hillary's people, and I'm sure they used the 25th Amendment to threaten him, and then they bribed him with, clemency from any of the crimes him or his family has suffered. And of course, they offered him a nice presidential library where we'll see him completely different than what he really is. In the library, he won't poop his pants and he'll be able to remember where he's at. You know how they love to rewrite history.
Oh yeah.
And I'm blown away, Sonja, how there's nobody, they've thwarted democracy. And the Democrats are getting in line instead of going, whoa, wait a minute, you just thwarted democracy. And the Republicans are not even challenging any of this.
Well, I mean, they do this all the time, though. Like, whatever people think about Bernie, I'm not a fan of him, but like, remember what they did? The DNC, the people wanted him. That was their guy. And what they do? They shoved Hillary down their throats. Just like, what was the issue with Newt Bueller and Sam Carpenter here in Oregon?
Right.
The Republican Party, the grassroots constituents, they wanted Sam Carpenter. And he got driven out of town. They shoved Newt Bueller down everyone's throat. He was a terrible candidate.
He was horrible. He was horrible on the Second Amendment. He was horrible on several social issues. He was a horrible, horrible candidate. That's why I can't stand sometimes being a Republican. And they also did that with Ron Paul.
Yeah.
For the presidential, they really here in Oregon, the Republicans shut down the count before it was over with, and many of the Ron Paul supporters didn't get to go to the national convention. And who knows if he would have won or not? But we know that there was manipulation. But there's always manipulation, and so it's just a sad situation. But I want to kind of get back to what I was telling you about with the challenger that I got behind, who was challenging David Brock Smith. We spent about $22,000 and we got 30% of the vote. We lost. We knew we were going to lose. But that wasn't our goal. Our goal was to ruin his reputation, number one, which we've done a hell of a job. Mm-hmm. And number two, we wanted him to spend a buttload of money, and he spent about $300,000 for his campaign. And now he's going around whining because he can't give other Republicans money because he doesn't have a Democrat challenger in his race. And so he's upset that he had to spend all that money to,
Yeah, that's one way to make him squirm. I highly doubt that either the Republican or the Democrat candidate will ever mention me whatsoever because they don't want to give me any credence. So right. I don't know, what sort of money they'll be spending to combat this, but they're going to cost the taxpayers of Oregon for funding their silly lawsuits and all the stuff they're doing against the third party. So people should be pretty upset about that.
They should be really upset about that because once again, they're wasting time, they're wasting our money, and yet they call themselves conservatives. We are the fiscally responsible ones. Really?
And my opponent, Lori, one of the reasons we're running against her is because her stance on war, her fiscal responsibility when it comes to foreign aid and all of that, is absolutely garbage. She votes just like the Democrats, absolutely lockstep with them. She votes for the NDAA, continuing that, which possibly opens the door to the draft in the future. She voted for continuing bombing Yemen as soon as she went into office. She's voted down the McCarthy line because that was her guy, and we all saw what happened to him. So that's one reason that she needs to go, because she's being very blasé about Oregonians' money when we're having trouble paying for basic necessities.
That was one of the things that was going around at the Republican convention, was that people were really ticked off at DeRemer's voting record, DeRemer. And what a name for a politician, DeRemer. I'm sorry, I won't go there. I won't make the jokes, but really, seriously. And And so that was the word coming down from a lot of people, that they were unsatisfied with her. She has really very little to do with conservatives. She votes more with the Democrats. And there were a lot of people pissed off with her. And of course, the establishment in the party sends down the message: we're all going to unify behind her, no matter what her voting record is. She's got an R behind her name, and our goal is to win. How do you like that philosophy?
No, and that's the pushback I've gotten. You know, I have a lot of Republican friends, and the majority of people I've talked to are like, we got to get rid of her. She's terrible. But some of them have made the point being like, yeah, but she's a Republican, and it's a, +2 seat and this and that. And it's like, but she's not. And she doesn't vote like them. And her whole thing is, I'm crossing the aisle. I'm working across the aisle. And it's like, that's cool. Like, people are sick of division, but you can't sacrifice the principles and values of the people who elected you in the first place. So what are you doing? Like, who are you actually doing that for?
And once again, it goes back to, really, are you an independent party, or are you just another wing of the unit party? Because you sound like, it's not really about walking across the aisle. It's about carrying their water. They really are carrying the water of the Democrats. And this was why there is a movement, I'll have you know, in the Republican Party that I'm partial is for starting because of what happened to me. But there were a lot of people who were disenfranchised, who've been literally attacked by sitting politicians, people in the same party attacked by these politicians. I mean, because Douglas County is nothing but Republican. All the officials are elected Republicans. And yet we were pushing for election integrity. Terry Noonkester is a lady who put an initiative, or tried to put an initiative on the ballot, but the county clerk, a Republican, his name is Dan Loomis, and all they wanted to do was go back to Hand County. And that seems like the county's right to do. In fact, the way I read the law, they have every right to do this. And he decided that it was unconstitutional. There are only 3 reasons that you can stop an initiative going through, and the clerk deciding whether it has constitutional value or not is not one of them. That happens after it becomes law. Then someone can challenge the law, but it's not up to the county clerk. But it didn't matter to this Republican. And so we had to pay a lot of money to challenge him in court. And just it was Friday afternoon that I talked to Terry Noonkester, and she got a summary judgment where they denied her initiatives and siding with the Republican against hand counting. And the Heritage Foundation is now threatening to sue Oregon if it doesn't clean up its voter roll. Do you, as a libertarian, do you think that there are problems with our voter rolls and registration and the way we do our elections?
Yeah, absolutely. I know a bunch of the people that were doing a lot of really good work around 2020, going around and checking the voter rolls and finding out where people were registered and being like, oh, here's a list of, collecting them all in a really nice way and saying, here's all the people that are registered to vote and they're not even alive. Like, let's clean this up. Or you have like an entire abandoned warehouse with a ton of registered voters there, but they're not there. So I don't see why there wouldn't be inconsistencies with how our voting goes. Look at the people managing it. And local control is a huge thing. Everything should be brought back to local control. And I'm a huge state rights fan. We gotta tighten everything up.
I believe that the counties, going down to even the precincts, should have authority over the voter rolls. The state has it right now.
Right.
And we argue all the time with our county clerk, who says, oh no, I have authority over it. I get to decide what's best. And we have found that our county, and I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Douglas Frank.
Yeah.
He's got a chart where they show the voter registration, where all the counties back in 74, when we did hand counting, the election was held in one day. The counties started at different points on this chart of people getting registered to vote. And then slowly, as it goes to mail-in ballots, slowly as it goes into a couple of things that took place, the lines become one, and there's no way statistically that that's even possible without manipulation. And they're challenging our expert, saying he's not an expert, it's been debunked, but yet they're not challenging the charts or the information or the numbers, because they're their numbers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have to go to logical fallacies and attack the person delivering the message if they can't go against the facts.
Arnie Alvardo, yes, I think I pronounced that right. The pettiness is the downfall. If the Republicans worked with the Libertarians, the parties could coordinate and fight against the Dems and pull in the independents to help each other. And yes, they could. And I have seen it happen. Like I said, I was the liaison between the Libertarians and the Republicans in New Mexico, and we were pushing for 6 drug reform bills in the legislature. This is a conservative Republican legislature in New Mexico at the time. It was a red state. And we knew that we would be lucky to get one of them through. We got 3 out of the 6. And it was because we stood together pushing a solid message, and we stood together. And the Republicans never would have done it without the outside Libertarians, because we always look like the radicals. And so we, on the drug issue, we even looked more like the radicals, which we wanted to do because I was coordinating this with the governor's office, and we wanted him to look like the sound and rational person. We're over here. Yeah, we don't care if they put heroin in Hershey bars. You know, this is America. And he's over here. Well, we don't want to put heroin in Hershey bars, but we then again don't want to put people in prison for life because they are addicted to drugs. And so we were able to make them sound reasonable, which really made the Democrats just absolutely bonkers. And we were able to push it through with the support of several of the Democrats and the Republican majority. So
I love that. I love hearing that. That's how it should work, right?
Yeah, that's the way it should.
Democrats and the Republican establishment do that together all the time. But then when a third party comes in, they're just like, no, like they're terrified for some reason, you know?
Well, and that's what I think is the biggest problem with the Republicans right now, is that they are such a divided party here in Oregon because of the uniparty status of the establishment and the fact that the grassroots want to pull them back. I'm one of those people who want to pull them back. And we see this maneuver. It just ticks off. I would say it probably ticks off more Republicans than who weren't ticked off, because we don't want our party doing that. This isn't what Republicans do. You know, we don't practice cancel culture. We don't try to take out people because they're challenging us. And once again, I'm speaking as the Republican. I want to be in a party where I stand on my principles, and I'm going to be challenged no matter who I'm facing. I'm going to be able to argue that point. And in fact, I don't know if you've read the party platform. The party platform has actually gotten much, much better over the years. And I was part of starting that back in 2012 after I left the Libertarian Party during the breakup. And I went to the Republican Party. We started working on getting, many of us Libertarians went to the Republican Party, started trying to get it back to, make sense anymore. And it's just, I don't know. It seems like a nonstop battle. You're not supposed to fight your own people, I guess is what I should say.
Yeah, the infighting is such an obstacle towards anything. We've dealt with it too, divisive actions within the party. And a lot of times it's like, are these operatives from the other party? Like what? Like what is happening? But I definitely know about the old guard, new guard situation with the Republicans, especially when I worked on the gubernatorial campaign. I was appalled at the party politics and how people treated each other. I was like, you guys realize we have to live together in the state after this campaign is over, and you guys are just like a pack of wolves. Like, it was nasty.
Who were you working for with Governor Leon Noble?
No, I was on Mark Gilman's team.
Oh, I'm good. Mark's been on this show several times.
yeah.
I'm a big fan of Mark Thielman. It was funny. He was just on a couple of weeks ago, and I got on Friday nights, we do what I call the Friday night rant. And okay, there's some drinking involved, maybe a little smoking. I don't want to confirm or deny anything. And so we were feeling really good. And Mark was talking about Lars Larson, how Lars Larson endorsed Bridget. Well, I'm thinking Bridget Bardot, but that's the actress. Bridget Barton, wasn't that her? Yeah. Yeah. So Lars endorsed Bridget Barton, but Thielman was his second. Well, I had to tell Thielman on my radio show, I had three people that the one that I endorsed, but all three I wanted, if we could get a winner out of any of them, I would be happy with it. It was Bridget Barton. It was it was Thielman second, and Bill Courier, not Bill Courier. No, it definitely wouldn't be Bill Courier. It's, I forget the gentleman's name now, but Thielman was my second too. And when he lost the election, lost the primary, Bridget, she endorsed Betsy Johnson, over Christine Drazen, which I didn't vote for Christine Drazen. I didn't support her, and for many good reasons.
Newt Bueller 2.0.
Yeah, totally. And so I had to tell Thielman that I made when Bridget called, I talked to her after the election, and I told her on the radio, I said, if I would have known you were going to endorse Johnson, I never would have endorsed you. I would have endorsed Thielman. So, and she apologized for it, but it was like, well, too late. I mean, you know what I mean? So you really don't know your candidates until after the election.
Yeah, there's wild things that people do. And I think being, outspoken and authentic as possible goes a really long way. It's, a reason why the Republican Party loves Trump. Like, I don't agree with all the guy's policies. I don't like his stance on war and a bunch of stuff. But the people love him because he's authentically himself and brash, and that goes a long way.
It does. And in fact, that's what makes me mad about the Republicans now. Dick Anderson was in town about 4 months ago, and I asked him a simple question: do you or do you not support the windmill project? He answered the question for 5 minutes, and I'm thinking, of course, well, it was a yes or no question. Yeah, this shouldn't have been that hard. And after he was done, I still had no clue whether he supported or didn't support it.
Right. That's that political speak that they do. It's what Kamala, the only thing she knows how to do is just all of that, all the fluff, but no actual information.
And I think that's part of the reason why we have so many non-affiliated voters. And and I think the libertarians kind of, well, I know once again, kind of, there's one of those filler words. The libertarians have picked some, freaky candidates. In fact, I think your presidential candidate, little freaky, man. It's
Well, like every party has division and people coming in and pulling strings and doing weird stuff. We suffer from the same things. I was at convention. I was one of the delegates. I was there for the whole thing.
Cool.
And I have to explain it to people quite often. But that's, we have party politics issues. We have left libertarians, we have right libertarians, we have libertarians that want to go pre-2020 when there was the Mises caucus takeover in 2022. And so there's just a lot of revenge politics happening.
And that lies, I think, the reason, like I said, most people just want to be a non-affiliated because they don't want to associate with the party and deal with the mess. And, for years and years, and I took heat for this. I was a big Harry Brown supporter for president. I mean, I supported Ron Paul when he was a libertarian in 1988. I think it was 1988. Damn, I'm old. And people, they were, oh no, you got to vote for the Republican. You got to, we all got to get together. And but he's not, I think it was George Bush. George Bush was a douchebag. Okay, apologize, but he was a dirtbag. And I wasn't going to vote for Bush or the Bushes, and I didn't vote for either one. I supported the Libertarian candidate in both those elections. But that's something else that the Republicans have to stop doing, is they have to stop demonize anyone who decides to go their own way. And then you've in fact kind of said the same thing when Kyle Rittenhouse said he was going to write in Ron Paul. I love your response a little bit down the line. Well, at least Ron Paul is trending.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you. You did some great work for us. Yeah, that was wild. That was really kind of disappointing to watch. Like, man, he's a young guy and he's already been through some trauma, and he could have endorsed anyone. And he could have picked anyone, but he picked Ron Paul. Like, that means that he is looking at least that side of things. Like, he is digging down. He just met with Ron Paul. Like, that's pretty wild for him to say Ron Paul. I was just trying to highlight that, being like, yeah, but like, what led him to Ron Paul? And to, it's questionable why you would endorse anyone right now. It's like very divided. But I wanted to give him kudos for that. That was really ballsy. And
I totally got it. Yeah. And I thought it was cool because I said the same thing. I had a lot of people who are all downing on me because, oh man, he needs to support Trump. He needs to support Trump. And why? He supported someone who's even better than Trump, and as far as my opinion. In fact, when Trump ran in 2016, I supported Rand Paul. I would have loved to have seen Rand Paul in office, and I'm glad he got out before the whole shit show circus started after. It was like the smartest thing. Rand Paul could see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And I've got to go shooting. We snuck Kyle Rittenhouse into Coos County. It was the funniest thing. And he was here at the Republican convention because we were trying to get rid of Solomon Yu. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Solomon Yu. Okay. So we were trying to get rid of him. So we brought him down to endorse and support our candidate. And it was funny. I was actually out. We had a day of shooting with Kyle Rittenhouse, and it was the most surreal thing. You know what I mean? It was so funny, but everyone kept bugging him so much. He on the way out, he's all, I think I shot more in Kenosha than I did here. So it's
wow. Dang, he's got a sense of humor. That's good.
That's good. A lot of people, because you're libertarian, they'll accuse you of being an anarchist, and I'm just that far from being an anarchist. I'll be honest with you. My wife, she's already there. She's an anarchist. She could do away with the government. That's why I married her. I love her because of that. But I'm just that far from being an anarchist. I consider myself an objectivist. I'm an existential student of objectivism, is the way I like to say that. And so people accuse us of being anarchist, and the people who are rioting with Antifa often claim to be anarchists. Then in the same breath, they want single payer insurance from the government.
Yeah, no, they're not anarchists. They are communists. They want more rulers. They just want the rulers that they want. My experience, I had a lot of experience dealing with Antifa during medical freedom protests that we were throwing in Portland. And we would literally be outside the Oregon Health Authority office protesting a government entity, right? Not elected by the people, but protesting them. Antifa would come and protest us protesting the government. And we point this out to them, being like, dude, like, they'd be like, oh, we're anarchists. I'm like, no, you're not. You should be here protesting the government with us. What are you doing?
Right.
You're commies. So yeah, people like to throw the anarchy label around. Anarchists is when you actually, like a real one, it's not no rules. It's no rulers. There's a set social structure that everyone wants to live in. The free market could look like anarchy, but it's really bound by like the merit of what people are offering and what people are taking out of the system. And like, you build this really beautiful marketplace for people to conduct free trade. And what we have right now is more of an anarcho-tyranny type of situation.
Oh, totally right. And geez, with have you seen what's going on in Britain? I mean, we knew that was eventually going to happen. And I was calling them Muslim colonizers. Why are they putting up with Muslim colonizers? And I'm sure that was mistaken. But I think, and this goes back to the open border thing. I would be for open borders if our country, if all the other countries were more what we should be. We're not even following the Constitution now, but if we were following the Constitution and we weren't paying for people to come here, we weren't paying for their medicine and giving them education, giving them housing, giving them all this stuff that we give them, I would be more applicable to having more open borders. That wouldn't be a problem with me. But when you invite a whole group of people from the third world country and say, guess what? We're going to pay for it all. That's a problem. You can't have the welfare state and open borders at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have to eliminate the welfare state, which needs to get eliminated anyways.
Anyway.
And you'd have to really beef up private property rights, which is, there's definitely open border libertarians. I'm definitely not an open border libertarian, but I understand taking away welfare state would improve the situation. But property rights are absolutely, this is our property. We're all invested in this country. We have a structure that we want to adhere to. And then with the doors just open and people are able to trample over that, it's the same issue in Oregon where, we have very loose castle doctrine, stand your ground laws that we want to, support taking away everyone's gun rights. It's like, how about we beef those things up? How do we beef up private property rights? The open border, we're not set up for that. It's a terrible idea. It's not going well.
It's not going well at all, but you nailed it on the head. The problem in this state, in this country, is we have eliminated our right to defend our property. And we have a right to own property. In fact, the original wording in the Declaration of Independence is life, liberty, and property was what Jefferson wrote. And I think it was Franklin who crossed it out and said, try again. And he wrote in liberty. And that too. And I think John Locke had already said that years previously. And so I don't think they wanted to copyright old John Locke. Maybe that's just my thought on that. But property is something that is sacred because, and this is something the left will say. They will say, are you going to value a person's life at them stealing your radio or them stealing your car? Isn't their life more important than your property? And I always answer, no, because I'm not the one devaluing their life. They're the ones devaluing their life by acting the way they're acting. And if they weren't acting the way they were acting, then I wouldn't have to defend my property, maybe up to the point of having to kill somebody in that defense.
Right. No, I totally agree. And yeah, it's tricky. I hear that argument too. And they're like, well, if someone steals your truck, like, oh, is your a piece of equipment, a vehicle worth more than someone's life? It's like they're not valuing what I have invested into this vehicle, into my life, into my family, into my career. Maybe that like someone just took out a bank loan for that truck and then you just took it from them. They can't provide for their family. They can't go do any of the things that they were trying to do. They can't take their kids to the hospital if they need to. Like, you don't know what impact you're going to make on someone's life. Private property rights are tantamount, in my opinion.
That's why, as an objectivist, I'm not religious. I'm a non-believer. I'm not spiritual in any stretch of the imagination. If I'm burning incense, it's to cover up the smell of anything else I might be burning. And so, as an objectivist, I like to take what's logical and reasonable out of anything such as religion, philosophy, ideology. And I totally believe the Christians got it right with the golden rule, but they weren't the only ones who had the golden rule. There was a form of golden rule in almost every culture, ancient culture. And, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If we lived that, we practiced that, we could have anarchy. We could have no rulers. And that's just one simple rule.
Well, yeah, a foundation of moral and principles. And people always create it. Like people are like, oh, anarchy. They want to look at like the chaos element of it. But most of us have some sort of foundation of morals and principles. I think that having spirituality or religion is extremely helpful for that when you cannot create it for yourself. And in the absence of religion or a higher power, government systems that don't serve you love to step in. And so naturally, humans are going to create a hierarchy. They're going to create structures and systems and rules. And yeah, the golden rule is pretty basic. Like my kids get it.
Right. And it's something everyone can practice. That's what always, I think you froze up.
I am frozen. I don't know why.
Oh, there you go. Oh, it's coming around.
I don't know what happened.
The signals weren't coming through. It had a stall in the system.
Oh, I have the spinning wheel of death. Let's see.
Oh, yep. There you go. I see the spinning wheel of death.
Hold on.
That's the unfortunate thing when you have modern technology and a live podcast.
Yeah.
But you know why I like the live podcast is that I don't like polished commentary. And I see so much of these podcasts on YouTube where the editing, they've got so much editing in the conversation. You often wonder if the conversation is actually, if they're saying what you think they're saying. Now I lost her completely, but that's okay. I'm sure she'll get back in here. And so that's why I like having these live shows, because what they say, that's going to be in the final product. And I don't want anything to be taken out of the final product. I want it to be real. I want it to be live. In fact, this is something I've done ever since I had a public access show back in Albuquerque. And it was one of the top rated public access shows. We had a live band, we had an audience, and the craziest things would happen because once again, it was live TV. And that's, I don't think I'll ever change that, even though I got some pre-recorded shows coming up. And so when we get her back on here, there are a lot of different things that I wanted to ask her about, such as the Second Amendment. You know, we were talking about standing your ground. So I would imagine she's totally 100% behind people being allowed to own guns. And then, you know, I'm going to ask her, what kind of people should be allowed to own guns? Should, oh, here she is. Hello.
Hey, I had to switch to my phone. My computer just blew up.
Can you turn your phone sideways and it'll take up more of the...
Wait.
Oh, it doesn't work. You don't have it on a rotate yet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
It's also really quiet. Sorry. Technical issues.
Technical issues. That's what I was just explaining while you were gone, why I do this live, because I don't like the polished product that you get on YouTube on a lot of these things. And I often wonder, are they really having the real conversation that they're having? I watch those shows on reality shows, and I watch how they edit them. And if you edit them, sometimes they actually don't sync up with the conversation they're having. And so I want to have that real conversation. So I apologize. That's just what happens on live show. But okay, we were talking about the Castle Doctrine.
Yeah.
And you're a huge supporter of the Castle Doctrine. And I think that right now is something that everyone in Oregon, I wish we had the other candidates here to hear what their beliefs are. I can only imagine what the Pacific Green and the Democrat would say. Oh no, we just give them a big hug and everything will be okay. Give them some fentanyl and everything will be all right. But the Castle Doctrine, like you said, it's weak here in Oregon. And so that right there, if you're promoting that as a candidate, I think that should be one of your definitely strongest issues, because that's going back to property and how important property is. That's what people are missing in this country. And that's why we have so many people who are able to get away with everything. They're camping out in the middle of the street. Sometimes they're camping on private property. We have this happening here in Coos County. There are certain cities in Coos County, Coos Bay and North Bend and the Empire District especially, where you got people camping on the streets, camping on people's porches. And as far as I'm concerned, if you own a property and someone's camping on your porch, you should be able to turn a fire hose on them and not have to worry about suffering any liability. Would you agree with that, or am I off here?
No, 100%. That's one thing that we are seriously lacking here in Oregon, is the ability to protect ourselves, provide for our families, What we have happening, especially in Portland right now, is a form of anarcho-tyranny. I mentioned that earlier. It's government perpetrated chaos, absolute chaos. And the citizens of Oregon, the tax-paying, property-owning citizens that have to exist in this reality when they're literally like trying to invest in their communities, they have no defense to it. Our self-defense laws here in Oregon are so weak, especially considering the environment that people are having to live in. Like, this wouldn't be that big of an issue if the environment wasn't absolutely chaotic. There's more preference given to the people, injecting drugs, like right in front of people's houses where their kids have to walk by, people that invest into the community. You need to be able to protect your family and your property. And right now, even if someone breaks into your house and you defend yourself and your family against them with a firearm, your life is ruined. Like, yes, maybe you'll get off legally in a few years after you spend tens of thousands of dollars. But that's going to seriously mess up your life. And so that needs to change first and foremost. A lot of candidates talk about we just need more funding for police. And it might get me in some trouble, but I think that's actually, we need a little bit of the opposite. We need more funding and more bills and more support for Oregonians to be able to defend themselves without being prosecuted by the law that you're actually asking to fund. Like, there's a little more nuance to the issue that I wish that would be talked about more.
Boy, you just led me into a whole wall of questions here, because I believe that all drugs should be legal. I'm one of those who believes all drugs should be legal, and I was opposed to Measure 114. And of course, some libertarians and some of the leftists were going, well, Rob, that's a contradiction. They're going to legalize drugs. And I said, well, you've got two problems with Measure 114. Number one, you don't have what I call a law enforcement, the right to protect your property, the right to protect yourself from druggies who are doing drugs. And you can't have them using drugs as an excuse to do whatever the hell they want to do. If you want to do drugs, you still have the same responsibility as the rest of us. And that was one of the big things as you were saying, we have to be able to protect our property. And if you're going to do drugs, you're not going to be allowed to do your drugs in the middle of the street. And as long as you're allowed to do your drugs in the middle of the street, or even on my property, we have a right to defend our property. But that wasn't in the bill. They didn't strengthen the property right laws, number one. And number two, as long as they never didn't have the regulatory authority over the supply, meaning they were selling the drugs. They were allowing a business to sell the drugs like the marijuana businesses are selling the drugs. As long as they didn't have that mechanism to have some authority over the supply, it was never going to work, because what you did was you gave the ability to drug gangs and drug dealers to basically do their business free at will and put crap in there. Now we got fentanyl on marijuana. Where is your stance on that with Measure 114? And
so I believe it's Measure 113. 114 was the firearms bill. But
you are correct.
There was a lot of initiative petitions going through. 113 is a bag of cats. I support decriminalization. I think the endless drug wars have been absolutely detrimental for America. People have the right to do in the privacy of their own home what they would like to do without the government interfering. However, one thing in 113, it was really badly written, for one.
Yes.
The other thing is that the state was a part of passing it. The state was promising to release funding for treatment centers. And that, I believe, has still never been funded. In fact, a lot of these treatment centers are really suffering from a lack of funding and support. So you just have lawlessness, and it should have been a part of the package deal that Oregonians were also provided protections for themselves that should have been beefed up. And that's part of the problem, is that this was an initiative petition. So it was pushed through special interest groups and people versus, and I think that there's a great use for initiative petitions. However, it doesn't get the same oversight. And like when you have a bill written in the House and it goes through the Senate, it has to go through the rules committees and people get to add things to it. And that can be beneficial because a lot of these just kind of loose strings in it. Like, it all sounds really good, but when they actually put it into effect, it had no backbone whatsoever. So now you have this situation. So now everyone can look at it and be like, oh, look, decriminalization, it didn't work. It's bad. Let's throw the whole thing out. And it's like, that's not the answer either, but it's very Hegelian, problem, reaction, solution. So
problem, reaction, solution, right? They create the problem, they direct the reaction, and of course they offer their solution. Yes.
Right.
And so one of the terms that you just used is decriminalization. I'm for actual legalization. That was my problem with pot. We're going to decriminalize it. No, we're going to legalize it. When they got rid of alcohol prohibition, alcohol is legalized. Do you see my difference in that term? And do you think that there's a difference between decriminalization and legalization?
I think that there is a big difference. I slightly disagree about legalization because, as we've seen with the marijuana industry in California and Oregon, specifically, the medical marijuana industry was exercising a lot of loopholes for a long time, and it helped establish a bunch of family farms that were producing marijuana, and sometimes they get raided by the feds, but for the most part, their community, especially community law enforcement, would leave them alone because they kind of create a protective situation in their community where only people that were living locally, like, they were kind of keeping an eye out. They were pushing out all the riffraff. They had it all contained. And yes, it was the black market kind of, but it mostly kept things pretty tight. And then legalization comes in. And so now the government wants its piece of the pie. So they bring in all the regulations. The OLCC controls the whole thing. They're making money. All those mom and pop family farms that really dominated these certain areas of Southern Oregon and Northern California, they've been wiped out. They've been forced out. And now there's a void. And that void is filled with the cartels because they don't care how many raids they get. They don't care about any of that. And anyone that is trying to grow recreationally that aren't following the OLC guidelines, they're getting slammed like harder than ever. So I feel like legalization can be a little bit dangerous because it opens a door for the government to take its cut.
Okay, I'm going to have to disagree with you because I don't think that there should be a marijuana and alcohol drug council or committee anyway. I don't think the Oregon, OLC?
Yeah, the OLCC.
OLCC. As far as I'm concerned, as a libertarian, I would get rid of all of that. I think that that if there are people selling adulterated drugs, pot with fentanyl in it, and someone smokes the pot and they have fentanyl, they've committed a crime. That's fraud in my world. And we don't need a committee to regulate those things because that is already, to me, a actionable offense. It's a crime. You shouldn't be allowed, there are two kinds of crimes, fraud and force. And so I would kind of disagree with that. I'm just one of those who thinks that there should be less government regulating the market, even though there are certain regulations I can understand having, but the fewer the better. And most of those regulations should be held through an actionable crime, someone who, like I said, committed a fraud or forced someone to do something.
I think we mostly agree. Yeah.
And I think we mostly agree. Ben Edel just sent me a message. He says, "Hey, brother, Sonja's last name is Finetech. Glad you're having her on."
Oh, you have Agora on there.
Yeah. Well, I saw your.
That's my Twitter name. That's,
okay. Yeah. I'm so sorry. What can I tell you? I was having a good day. So, boy, now I forget about the second question that I was going to ask about Measure 1.
I'm going to try and re-enter the studio on my computer really quick.
All right, go for it. Because there are a lot of things with Measure 113, like she was saying, that it was ridiculous. And so, yeah, that's much better. That's a much better picture.
Yay, okay.
The phone, I hate the phone because it always puts you, if you don't get it right, it puts you in a little square, and it's just... But I'll tell you what, the microphone was excellent on your phone.
Oh, really?
So,
Oh, great.
yeah, in fact, this isn't bad, but I mean, the microphone on your phone was just phenomenal.
That's
And
great.
I think that's because of the design of it. So, boy, I had several questions and now I'm hitting a wall on that. But we were talking about legalization and Measure 113. And okay, so this is the problem we have now with Measure 113 is that people who said it failed, because I think it failed because we didn't have the proper law enforcement. We have a justice system that's been sabotaged by the leftist extremists in Oregon. I don't think it failed because drugs were decriminalized. I think it was failed because of several of the reasons that we talked about. But I also think that it was a setup to fail so that they could say libertarianism doesn't work.
Right.
And do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Built to fail from the get-go.
And so, and that goes back to a comment you made about how, you thought you were going to get in trouble for this, saying that you don't want to see more money go to cops and the police. So Curry County and Coos County were two of the poorest counties in the entire state, which is weird because, we have so many natural resources. We should be one of the richest counties in the state just by accident because of the natural resources. But of course, we're not able to utilize those natural resources to our benefit. And so the commissioners are complaining because they don't have any money to build any jails. The jail was built for 250 beds. We're down to 50 beds. Nobody's being kept in jail. And so they passed a tax levy they put on the primary ballot, and it failed. It failed by 60%. The one in Curry County failed by 72%. I mean, that was a huge middle finger. Yeah. And of course, the leftists go, well, you're Republican counties. Why are you trying to defund the police? And here is my explanation, and I want to hear your responses. I would tell people it's not that we're defunding the police. We don't want to fund a justice system that has been sabotaged by the state, which eliminates the ability of our law enforcement to do their job anyway. Even if they arrest them, they're not going to keep them in jail. Even if they keep them in jail, they're not going to prosecute them. And if they're lucky enough to get prosecuted, the state isn't holding prisoners for any long period of time anyway. So why would we give more money, no matter how good our law enforcement is? And I like our sheriff. I think they could do a better job if they had more money, but they would have to have a legal system that wasn't sabotaged to be able to do that job. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, our police force, it doesn't matter how great their training is or, whatever. If they're existing within a system that's inherently broken, you have like the DA in Portland, Mike Schmidt. It doesn't matter how quickly they go after crime or whatever. They're just going to get churned right back out. So their hands are tied in the first place. I would support, more funding for training, possibly. I think that there's a little bit of a lack of that, but for the most part, the whole system is broken. So what are you going to do? You're just putting Band-Aids over it. And then at the same time, there's not money or support or bills going towards Oregonians being able to protect their own property. Like, I have to keep going back to that. They just want to dump more money into a system that's totally broken, while average everyday people can't even protect their family without the law also coming after them. So what do you do about that?
Yeah. I mean, what do you do? And that's why I think many people are to the point where there is no political solution, because we're never going to get the right people in office. And if we do get them in office, they're outnumbered. So at some point, it's going to be revolution in the street, or is it going to be revolution? Maybe it's going to be more like a civil war. I still haven't decided how that's going to go down. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, there is a. Have you read Neil Howe's A Fourth Turning?
I've heard of the book, The Fourth Turning. Yes.
Highly recommend anyone to read it. Also, The Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. He's a stock money investment guy that watches trends in the world. I would say, based off of what people like them have to say about it, and also things that we can see with our own eyes, especially with what's happening with the stock market right now and in the Middle East, something is coming. Something is happening. We are at the end of an empire. Nothing lasts forever. We have spread ourselves pretty thin. And
Yeah.
there is a massive amount of polarizing and social and cultural disruption happening right now. And you can look historically at countries, what happens when all of these things line up. So I'm not going to be a doomsdayer and say specifically that I think anything bad is going to happen. I wish for the best. But I think people would be remiss in not preparing themselves for the worst and also continuing to expect the best, which is why my whole background is in community building, and I'm a farmer. And so I want to share my skills and get people educated and get people more resilient and to build networks and personal responsibility for themselves. But at the same time, I have one foot in politics because it's really, really important to kind of just keep that door open. It's like, let's use the system. Let's try and fix the system for as long as we can. But you should also have all these other things in your back pocket. You shouldn't just depend on politics to save you.
I fully agree with you. And when I talk to my friends who are prepping for the end, they see the war coming. They see destruction coming, and they have the same ideas that we're a country that is failing and we're at the end of our cycle. And that's what they're preparing for. And they don't get involved with politics because they don't believe there's a political solution. And they ask me all the time, Rob, why do you bother wasting your time? And there's two reasons. One, like you said, I like to hope for the best. I try to prepare for the worst. I got to be a realist, and there's a lot of things that we got to get prepared for. And I hope that a lot of people out there are preparing for this, but I hope for the best, because I think that maybe mankind, maybe if we've seen this cycle so many times in history, at some point we'll slam on the brakes, we'll turn it around, and we'll get right again. I have very little idea that that's going to happen. I hope it does. I'm hoping a lot of hope. And so the other thing is I need an alibi. And what I mean by that is when the shit hits the fan and I got to go out there and I got to take out a whole bunch of communists or a whole bunch of anarchists who aren't really anarchists, or whoever's attacking, maybe it's China, when it all breaks down and they catch me in the streets and they take me off to whatever military trial that's left, whatever that tribunal is, and they ask me, well, why are you out there in the streets causing this? And I'm going to answer, because I tried every legitimate way. I've ran initiatives, I've done referendums, I've done recalls, I've had candidates who I've tried to get in office, I've tried to work with politicians who are in office. I have done we've used the courts to try to remedy the situation with no luck, spent a lot of money and time. So in many ways, I tell them, this is my alibi. I don't know if I'm going to be able to use it as a defense, but do you understand where I'm coming from on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've taken the black pill. I've gotten burnt out on everything, being like, okay, like the courts, especially after COVID, it's like the courts, and like we tried all these legal things, we tried the protests, and they just ignored us, and they just continued just pushing forward with whatever their gnarly agenda was. So it's really easy to take the black pill and succumb to hopelessness. But I think that continuing to try and fix the system until it can't be fixed anymore is a great way to keep up morale. It's a great way to keep people inspired, even if people believe that it's meaningless, even if people think that their vote doesn't count. It's like, it still improves morale, and we need a lot of hope right now. We need to feel like we can actually affect change. And then at the same time, be like your prepper friends, like also be providing things for you and your family for the future, because we should be doing that anyways. That's another thing, is this whole dependence on the system to support you every way. We should have a lot more personal accountability for our health and safety than we do right now.
I love watching your videos, the milking of the cow. You know how long it's been since I milked a cow? And that's, that's the kind of stuff we did on the farms and the ranches and living out in the country and stuff. But you do that on a regular basis. You live on a ranch?
So
A
my
farm?
family owns a farm down in Douglas County, actually. And
Cool.
I moved there when we first started. It's been about 13 years. And then I moved up to Portland in 2019. I'm not in Portland anymore, thank goodness. But in 2019 for my husband's work. So now I'm in Clackamas County. But I go down there to my family's farm often. And I also go to other farms and work at different farms. So I do a lot of consultation. But anytime I have an opportunity to go down there and help milk the cows and do butchery, it's really great. I highly recommend it.
They're trying to stop your ability to do butchery.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. So once again, you go back to the property rights. What do you do when the government says you're no longer allowed to farm or ranch as someone who's in that industry? What do you do?
You have a lot of friends, and you've got really good gates.
Yeah.
No, but also beyond that, my family operates as a PMA, so private membership association, and so they've effectively they don't work in the public domain, similar to the Boy Scouts, how they operated for a really long time, and a lot of private memberships that the elite and very wealthy people use private memberships very often. It's available for anyone to start their own private membership. So they've effectively told the state that you don't really have jurisdiction here. We're not serving food to the public. We serve food to our members.
Okay, so that once again is one of those things that bugged the hell out of me, because during COVID, a lot of people were talking about a PMA, a private membership association. And in my mind, that's how a free market works. I mean, I think one of the worst things that was ever passed was was it 1963? I think it was the 1963 Civil Rights Act, which really allowed the government to get into our businesses. I mean, there was good things and good intentions behind it, but what they did is they got the government into our businesses, telling us what we can and can't do with our businesses. And that is infuriating, because I think every business, I own it. It's really a PMA. Whoever I let in the door is part of my membership. So isn't that kind of frustrating to you as a libertarian, that you're playing these word games and semantics to have to do something that's really your right?
Right. It's a right of association, and people, they get, oh, it doesn't matter. That's just like, you're just playing with words. The government doesn't care. And maybe if they wanted to make example out of us, they could. But at the same time, this is literally the free market in action as it was built, as it was supposed to be. People are willfully engaging in commerce with us. And if they don't like our products, if they don't think there's enough oversight, if they don't like any part of it, they can leave. They can go somewhere else, or we can change the way that we're doing things to suit our members. That's how it's supposed to be. I got frustrated during the COVID years. There was a lot of maskless protests, and we did a few when I was working with Free Oregon. And I personally, I was kind of like, I don't really get this one. Like it for a hospital, maybe, because that's public service. Everyone has to have access to the hospital. So I would protest there like crazy. And we did, when they would deny children getting care if they didn't put a mask on. But a private business, it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't have to shop there. Why do I want to give them money in the first place? So that goes back to like the freedom of association.
Yeah. And we were denied that. Which they did it under the guise, it's an emergency. We passed an emergency act, and therefore the Constitution has been suspended for only 2 weeks. Remember, it was only going to be 2 weeks, and then 2 years later, we're still going, well, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was always what's frustrated me. We're supposed to have a free market. We don't have a free market anymore. And if we actually did, more people wouldn't need the government to depend on the government. And I'll give you another example of that. We have tiny houses. They're called crate houses. They're little bitty houses. They're little bitty sheds, okay? And they allow the homeless to live in these sheds because the county has to provide the homeless somewhere to go, or they're allowed to camp anywhere willy-nilly in the county. So they have to have a place for the homeless to go. So they provide these little shanty shacks, what I call them. And I'm thinking, why don't they allow developers to do this? Because if a developer put up this shanty town where he could rent out these little shacks for $25, he could have a bathroom that everyone use, a communal bathroom, communal showers, and you just have a little shack to live in. And that's because probably most of the time you've made poor choices in your life, and now you've ended up in this situation. But if a private developer did that, they would be called a slumlord. But yet the government does that, and they're called magnificent for doing this. They're wonderful. They're angels. Where do you see the housing problem and that dichotomy that I explained?
Yeah, I think, well, we can always bring it back to taxation, right? Like houses, like buying a house, like the market right now is out of reach for most people. Like the market's absolutely insane in Oregon. I was looking at purchasing a house recently and it was like, not right now. I mean, we'll see with what happens with the stock market. But a big part of the issue is what I see with housing affordability is more about government interference. And so you have the regulatory boards, all the restrictions, like the cost for a developer to even develop a piece of property and go fill out all the paperwork and all the licenses and all the permits. And so then by the time it's done being developed, the cost that they have to sell it or to rent it, it makes it totally prohibitive for anyone to live in it in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing is like rolling back the regulatory state. People want to put blame in all these different places, but it's like we need to look at the regulatory state. We need to look at how prohibitive it is for construction workers, for contractors, for developers, for people buying a piece of property and trying to develop it. Like, do you know, I've heard from so many people, they buy a beautiful piece of property, they're going to build their dream home, or they're going to put like a cool tiny home on it or something, or a yurt.
Yep. And
the state's like, nope. Like, you need to have this and that and this many square footage. Like, it's ridiculous. That's
I have had friends who've moved here from other states thinking we're going to buy some property and we're going to put up a house.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone laughs at them because we know as Oregonians, well, that's just not going to happen. It takes the permitting process takes a year or so itself. Mm-hmm. And what you just nailed it. It's the regulatory state, the regulations on it, the land use laws. I mean, 54% of the state is owned by the feds. Couldn't they give up 30% of it? I think they should give up all of it, but give up 30% of it and let's build some housing. The fact that we, have so many restrictions on where you can and can't build with the zoning laws and stuff. Like you said, there's a regulatory state that's been built that has just destroyed the ability for developers to develop houses. I mean, they do it in other states, and it's crazy what they're doing here. So, and Arnie Alvarda, this is a funny comment. He said, I should be doing farm chores right now, but here I am supporting FAFO politics. Cool. Nice. Thank you, Arnie. I mean, you can go feed the pigs tonight. Feed the pigs and the chickens tonight, and they'll be happy. I mean, so
I can't tell how many times I've done podcasts and speaking on Twitter Spaces with an earbud in one ear and like trying to chase pigs at the same time. It's great.
That's cool. That would have been cool. I would have been all right with that. That would have been all right. So let me get to your campaign. You're running against 4 other people. 2 of them are in the minor parties, 2 of them from the major parties. Tell us, what is your campaign about, and what do you think you can do if you actually were able to get into office?
Yeah, those are great questions. My campaign is about highlighting a third-party candidate as an alternative to the war machine in both the Republican and the Democrat candidates. It's to show Oregonians that there's a different way. We have, as the Libertarian Party, principles of liberty that we would love to share those values with the rest of Oregon. The exposure is beautiful for everyone to have access to. And in the Senate, I mean, or not the Senate, in the House of Representatives, the federal government is ruled by, in Congress, Article 1, Section 8. It's very, very specific. And some people like to apply a really broad understanding of it. But for me, it's very simple. We make law around military, our overseas foreign activity, which I think all needs to be pulled back. The way that tax dollars, federal tax dollars are used, which I also think need to not really be a thing, you know. And so, yeah, in Congress, it's all about pulling everything back. I'm a huge proponent of states' rights. There's so many issues that they ask people in Congress to comment about that are really, at the end of the day, I shouldn't have an important opinion on that. That should be up to the state. That should be up to the state house, the state senators. Stop asking your U.S. congressmen to make rules about what's happening in your state. We have very specific job to do, and the people that we have in power right now are doing a terrible job at it. They're not sticking to what they know. And in the case of Lori, the Oregon Republican Party needs to kind of feel the heat for what candidates they push forward, because they're not representing conservatives in Oregon or any Oregonian whatsoever. Yeah, her votes are along the McCarthy line, and we need someone in office like myself that is not going to play those games and benefit the pockets of special interests.
And you would, I'm not even sure if, I think there's one or two independent people in the House. Are there any libertarians, do you know, in the House right now?
Not big L elected libertarians. I mean, Thomas Massey is the closest thing that we have to a libertarian.
Right.
He is phenomenal. You know,
Yep.
One thing I do is I look at Lori's votes and see if they're opposite of Massey's.
Right. Compare them to,
And then
yeah.
I go off of that because he votes against his own party all the time. But they're
Yep.
for really legitimate good things. And he's just been a really great representative of what you could be. And I have no idea how the guy keep staying in office, because they normally push people like him out really quick. But the people who vote for him love him.
Yeah.
He represents Kentucky very well.
And like you said, he votes many times against his party, which he takes heat for, but that's what you're supposed to do. You're voting not with the party, you're voting for what your constituents want and what is aligned with the Constitution.
Right.
So if you could get into office, that would kind of give you a nice advantage over Republicans who want to be libertarians, but were too chicken shit to run as libertarians. So if you got into office, it would kind of give you cover, because it's like, well, this is my party. What did you expect? Right. I mean, Bernie Sanders, we expect him to be a socialist.
Right. Right. And that's a really fun thing about being a libertarian too, is that I'm not beholden to all of these megalithic structures, like all their special interests. Like I'm the underdog. I'm the small guy that they want to keep out at all costs. And so if I get in there, you know, we can wreak a lot of really positive havoc.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. I think that's a great thing. Do you think that Congress has acquiesced, the federal Congress has acquiesced too much authority to the presidency, the administrative office?
Yeah, for the most part. I think that the whole system is very entangled in an unhealthy way. It's very far from the constitutional authorities it was supposed to have in the first place. I think there's way too much credence given to the popularity contest that is the presidency, that is the executive office. I think as a representative of America and where America is at, the presidency is extremely important. But as far as the laws that are made, I wish people would put a little more energy and excitement around the people they put in office in Congress, almost like they do for the presidency.
Oh, totally. Totally. And that was never the way it was supposed to be. It's like the president is the rock star, and people think, oh, well, he's in charge of the government. And it's like, no, he's one of three major other pieces that have acquiesced, especially war, you know, with the NDAA, with the Patriot Act. the AU, that was the really bad one. The authorization use of military force, the AUMF, huge stuff. All three of those bills, all three of them need to sunset. And would you be against?
They just voted to continue it. And
Yeah.
and Lori Chavez DeRemer, my opponent, she
Yep.
voted for it. You know, and there was a clause in it or something that allowed for the possibility of reinstating the draft at some point, like some new language around that. Like, and then in the Senate where it is now, or it's headed, they're talking about possibly making the draft applied to women. Like, what the heck? Like, why would you vote? The NDAA is the Patriot Act on steroids. It should have it should have sunset, or it should have never happened in the first place.
I believe was it section 21 or section 22 that allows for the indefinite detention of American citizens. Yeah. I believe that's still in there, if I'm not mistaken.
It's an attack on American citizens. It's a disgrace.
And that's, so, you know, as a congressman, that's exactly what I want someone in there fighting against, are the Patriot Act, the most unpatriotic act there is. And, it takes an act of Congress, I believe, to get rid of certain administrative offices. I'm not my schoolhouse rock is failing me right now. But I don't think the president can work single-handedly to get rid of, like, the Department of Education, the Department of Energy. Are there departments in the government that you would like to, just get rid of?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every alphabet agency there is. We could just start there. I think the Department of Education should have never happened. Again, like, let's roll it back to the states. I also, as a farmer, I have a really big issue with the way the USDA is run. I believe that Thomas Massey is also in agreement on that one. We could just start there. And then also getting rid of the alphabet agencies that are investigating and attacking American citizens every day.
So you're running for a federal position. And as a federal position, I believe there are different election laws that you have to obey. In Oregon, if you are running for the state house, I think it's unlimited how much money I could give you. But is there a limit on how much people can donate to you? And is there a place that people can go if they wanted to donate for you?
I believe that we do have a cap. We're not, doing a huge amount of funding, but we definitely need funding to be able to get signs out there and pamphlets. And so I think that I'd have to ask my treasurer, but I think we're around like 7,000, but there's ways of filing. If you make more money than that, then you can file a certain way, which would be amazing and awesome to have that sort of support. So we just got everything finished with our banking and our filing. I don't know if there's a link on the website yet, but if you go to sonjafororegon.com, there's a sign-up sheet to at least become a volunteer or possibly a future donor. I don't know if the button's up yet. This is just getting finalized today since my filing just went through. sonjafororegon.com. We definitely would appreciate any donations and any people that want to volunteer and help us.
And this is the time that people need to do this. We're at the end of summer. We're only like 80. We're past 90 days. It's like 80 some odd days that we're going to be doing this vote.
Oh yeah.
So when do they decide if you're eligible? I mean, you got that letter. Do they, they put your name on the ballot and at the very end they go, oh, hey, guess what? You're out of here.
I guess they probably have a deadline with, what is the date? August 17th I might be wrong on that, is my deadline to get in the voter pamphlet. And so we are having a push to get signatures before that time. We need 300 signatures from in the district to get in the voter pamphlet, which is critical, or we need funding for, I believe, $2,500 to pay to play to get in the pamphlet. So I think they would have to stop me before then.
I would think so.
Because then I'm in the ballot. What are they going to do?
Good question. I mean, that's a lot of ballots that they would have to reprint. I think there's no
Yeah.
way. I think once you hit that date, which you said August 17th, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So I wouldn't even worry. There's no way they're going to be able to pull you off. There
Yeah, I
is
mean,
no way.
I love that. I'd like the opportunity for volunteers to go out with the petition and meet people. But if someone dropped, a big fatty donation, we'd probably run and just get that thing filed immediately and on the ballot just to avoid the situation.
My district, I have Val Hoyle as my representative. She's smoking a lot of that Lamota money. She's got a lot of that Lamota money.
I heard who was the Secretary of State that got kicked out?
Is Shamia Fagan.
Yeah,
Yes.
She's
Yeah. Yeah, she was a real piece. I actually have argued with her up in Salem on the gun bills and stuff. And it was funny. As soon as she was elected, Kevin Starr, we were talking, and he's all, I'm going to pull all my money out of my PAC because I don't want to have to deal with this bitch. And I'm like, hey, I've closed down all my PACs because I didn't want to deal with her. And once again, it's a way of suppressing activity in the process, because that's exactly what I did. I had a couple of PACs and we just pulled them. And now that I see the way it was going, I'll probably be getting another PAC soon for the windmill project that we're doing and stuff.
Good.
But that, to me, once again, it's like the PMA, the private membership association. It's like I have to have a political action committee when I should just be allowed to be in the process. I'm a human. Right. Here I am. And this is why you have so many people who are trying to do that sovereign citizen thing. And I always tell them, well, that's nice, but they still take you to jail. Maybe they'll call you sovereign citizen when they convict you. I don't know. I
don't recommend it. Yeah. I get frustrated because I talk a lot about the PMAs and also setting up your own ministry to operate your PMA underneath. And people are like, oh, it's just sovereign citizen stuff. And it's like, it's not. I know the whole sovereign citizen thing, it gets people in a lot of trouble, and the people pushing it are not anywhere to be found when the state decides to call your bluff.
Yep.
So the ethos of it makes sense, but in application, it just doesn't hold up. But the PMA structure is very different. And it's been existing since the beginning of the country. So.
That is good. I've had you on here for a while. I imagine you've got a lot to do. And so I wanted to tell you this, that it really ticked me off that the Republicans went after you guys the way they did. And you're not in my district, but I fully 100% endorse you and support you. I think that I would much rather have you there than DeRemer. In fact, I would much rather have Sonja Feintek in there than DeRemer. I totally think that just talking to you, and that's why I like having these conversations. I mean, a lot of what we talked about really wasn't in the realm of you being a U.S. Representative, you know what I mean? So we talked about a lot of state issues, but that's how we find out a lot of the core beliefs. And those core beliefs, I believe, if you're a good, decent person, and I believe you are, that's what carries you on into office on whatever level that you go into. So I fully endorse you. I hope you make it. And before I get you out of here, is there anything you want to tell the listeners before you go?
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, Rob, and your support, your endorsement. That means a lot. Really appreciate that. And yeah, Oregonians, if you want something a little bit different than the status quo, we have our duopoly in power. It's two sides of the same coin. Those special interests are not representing you. Your tax dollars are being stolen to fund things that don't actually support you, Oregonians or Americans alike. Grocery bills are hard. Gas is hard. Housing, we talked about housing affordability. That's a huge issue here in Oregon. If you want things to be different, if you want change for once, vote for me. Go to SonjaForOregon.com. Thank you.
And thank you, Sonja. And like I said, I sent you the links so that those links are good forever. They'll take you to YouTube and Rumble. So if you want to share them with anyone, you're more than welcome. And any part of this recording that you want to capture and keep, you're more than welcome. So just let me know what I can do for you, and I'd be more than happy to do it. And I want to thank you for coming on the show.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No problem. You take care. All right. I really enjoyed that interview. A very lovely lady libertarian. Yes. And I think that you Republicans out there, whichever dumbass in the Republican Party who thought it was a good idea to attack the libertarians, well, guess what? I'm endorsing the libertarian candidate, and I'm going to go out and find out who all the other libertarians are. And if they are as good as Sonja here, I mean, she was excellent. She was right down the board. Great person, great politics, good ideology. I'm going to follow that. And so there is nothing going to stop me from that, especially when the Republicans are, well, they're being bullies. They're being bullies. And I know Matt Rao, he's, what was his position? I think he's the chair of the Libertarian Party. Yeah, we're going to get him on here. I'm going to stay a Republican only because that's the only way I can get close enough to stick them really good. And so and I'm not doing it to destroy the party. The Republicans will say that all the time. Rob's trying to destroy the party. No, I'm trying to reform the party. The party of Abe has really taken a bad turn. And let's face it, Abe Lincoln as a president, he violated the Constitution on a regular basis. So it wasn't like he was an angel himself. So there are a lot of problems with the party, and I would like to help fix that. But that's not going to stop me from endorsing people like Sonja here. I think she's a great person. And you know how I know she's a really good person? Because I don't really know Sonja, but we have a lot of mutual friends, and they speak highly of her. And that's good enough for me, because just listening to what she said here on the radio and knowing the people that speak highly of her, I've got to endorse this woman. DeRemer, like I said, I was at the Republican convention at the Mill, and even the people at the Republicans at the Mill were downing on DeRemer because, she's a turncoat. She votes with the Democrats. Why bother? She's like another David Brock Smith. If they're going to vote like a Democrat, well, then I'm not going to support them anymore. And that's what we got to do with the Republican Party. That's what we got to do with any candidate who's running for office claiming to be one thing when they're actually something else. If there's something else, don't vote for them. Screw them. This is how you work this situation, and you got to teach them a lesson. I've got a new article out on my website. It's a really good article about Dick Anderson, and it talks about how Kamala Harris wasn't the first one to be chosen by the establishment of a party. It talks about how Dick Anderson was chosen by the Republicans because the Republicans manipulated the election in such a way that they were able to win him his seat. And believe me, we dragged him. We literally dragged Dick Anderson across the finish line. And after we did, and he went to office and made the votes he made and voted with the Democrats the majority of the time, I was disgusted. I mean, I was having to apologize to people who I asked them to vote for Dick Anderson. They go, "Well, weren't you the guy who asked me to vote for Dick?" I'm sorry, don't vote for Dick. Dick isn't good. Dick is bad. And so that's why I wrote an article about it, and you can find that on my website, robtaylorreport.com. And I think you'll find it interesting because, I don't hold any punches on this one. And if you can see it on the screen there it is, Senator Dick Anderson, handpicked by the political establishment. I wrote this just about a week ago, and it talks about how the Democrats committed a coup against President Biden. It was a total coup. And I don't know why people aren't pissed off about it. But the fact is that political parties do this all the time. And that's what they did with Dick Anderson. And you can read about it on my website at robtaylorreport.com. You can catch me on the blog page. That's where that article is. And there's a lot of other articles on there that you can check out. I highly recommend you go there and find out what's going on in Southern Oregon. You know, I try to cover the entire state, and there's not a whole lot of national news that I do cover, but there is some. But that's just not even, you know, pertaining to the fact that whatever is happening in Oregon is going to happen everywhere. These Marxists, they're perfecting their Marxism here in Oregon, here in Washington and California on the leftist coast. And they're perfecting that. And they're going to try to move that all across this country. They're doing the same thing on the East Coast. And whatever happens here in Oregon, that's going to be happening everywhere. That's going to be going everywhere. And so I recommend that any of you out there who are catching this podcast in any other part of the country, what I'm saying and talking about here in Oregon, that's coming your way. In many ways, it's probably already in your state. And so I may not be covering some of the issues that is happening in Idaho or Texas or New Mexico, Arizona, wherever. I am talking about issues that will be coming your way, and I try to relate it to what's happening here in Oregon, because there's a lot of crap happening here, and I'll tell you what, we got to do something about it. I mean, I know people don't think that there is a solution, a political solution, and eventually we're just going to be killing each other in the streets. I don't know. That may happen. We may be on the decline of a nation, and those worst scenarios may play out. But as Sonja said, we got to hope for the best. We got to hope for the best, and we got to work for the best. We got to work for that change, and that's why, you know, I decided to become a Republican to try to change the Republican Party. I think the party is beyond help, but I'm going to try. I think the country is, well, it may be beyond help, but I'm going to try, and I hope you keep trying too. And that's why it's important that if there are situations where your voice, you speaking up, can help the political landscape, well, then it's time that you speak up. Tomorrow is going to be one of those times when you can speak up. Tomorrow at the Coos County Commissioners meeting, the Board of Commissioners, they're going to be deciding on putting whether or not to put an advisory question on the ballot. And the question is going to be a simple question. Do you want the windmill project to be put up off the coast of Oregon? Do you want that project? Yes or no? Pretty simple question. And the reason we're doing this is because the commissioners, they're not in support of the windmill project. No, they actually oppose this project, and they think that most of the people in the county, including people in the Democratic Party, they're opposed to this project as well. In fact, I've met a lot of environmentalists, leftist environmentalists, who I fought on several different issues, where they are opposed to this windmill project as well. And I believe that we're going to get anywhere between 65 and 70% of the people voting against the project. And then we're going to take that, and Curry County is doing the same thing, and I think they're going to vote against it as well. Then we're going to take that and use that as a blunt force object to bludgeon the federal government and the governor of this state, bludgeon them into submission with our vote. That's the idea. We're going to bludgeon them really good with our vote here, and we're going to show them that the people of Oregon and the South Coast do not want her stupid windmill project. If California needs energy, let them put the windmills up in their coast. And by the way, we're joining with a national group. Get this, there are so many groups locally up and down the East Coast and West Coast that have been formed fighting against these windmills. We have a national group that's forming, a national windmill group. And I'm going to be on a call, hopefully tomorrow. We're going to be talking with people from all over the country who are opposed to these windmills. Now, there are some people who think the windmills work great on land. I, for one, I don't think so. I don't think there's nothing wrong with coal, oil, natural gas. I don't think there's anything wrong with nuclear energy. I think it's a great idea. And Wind turbines, solar power, I think is a lost cause. I think it's a bunch of BS. I think it puts our grid, our energy grid in the hands of the Chinese, our enemies. They're our enemies. Let's face it, not because I say so, they say so. The Chinese government has declared an economic war on America many decades ago. You don't believe me? Look it up. And if they declare an economic war, you might as well declare an all-out war. So we've got to beware, very beware of the Chinese and what their intentions are. And why would we put our energy grid in their hands? Because those solar panels, these wind turbines, a lot of that comes from China. All the rare earth metals that it takes to create both of those products, that comes from China. And the fact is that yes, they might produce a little bit of energy. Solar might produce a little bit of energy. The wind turbines might create a little bit of energy, but they don't create anything else. They don't create any other product. And as I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, oil creates a lot of products. Everything that I'm looking at in my room right here, from the lamp to the printer to the desk that I'm sitting in front of, all of those things have petroleum products inside whatever they're made of. The plastics, the metals that have coatings on them, all of this stuff it's unlimited of what oil creates, what petroleum creates. And so it's nuts to think that we're going to be able to live without this stuff. I think that oil is a renewable energy because the earth creates it on a regular basis. And so we should be utilizing that and finding newer, cleaner ways to use it. That's the intuitive way of looking at oil, coal, nuclear energy, all of that stuff. But at least oil creates a lot of other products that we use, and we're never going to be able to live without it. Just face the facts. You're not going to be able to live without it, and I don't want to live without it because we take advantage of all those comforts, those comfort products that are created by oil. So I don't know, just a thought there. So please come out to the wind turbine question that the Board of Commissioners is going to be putting on the ballot. Come out and to the meeting where they're going to be asking whether to put that on the ballot, and encourage them to put it on the ballot because we got to win this. We got to win this, and we need a lot of people out there. So that's tomorrow at 9 o'clock at the Owen Buildings here in Coos County. That's the Owen Buildings in Coquille. So go to Coquille and check it out tomorrow morning. I think it'd be a wonderful thing. I also want to remind people, hey, I'm sponsored. And even though we weren't playing Where's 3H Tree Service, Matt got a hold of me, and he's still way out in the middle of the woods, and nobody was going to be able to find him. So we didn't play Where's 3H Tree Service today, but if you need to get down some of those trees, you got some problem trees, you got some trees that are causing you trouble, they're a liability, they've got disease, they're infested with bugs, much like Antifa. Yeah, I guess they're Antifa trees. You got a couple of Antifa trees in your yard that's causing all these problems? Well, you need to call Matt Holman and the Matt Holman family who do 3H Tree Service. You can get them at 541-294-1800. Once again, that's 541-294-1800, 3H Tree Service. And go check out their videos on their Facebook page of the same name. They've got a Facebook page called 3H Tree Service. They got some really cool videos of some of the trees they take out. And it was funny. I was just watching one today where they were at this farm, and Matt was way up in this tree taking out these branches and stuff, trying to miss everything around them, because these trees, they grow in the middle of your yard, around your house, around your shed, and it's hard to cut down some of these trees without taking down your shed. But 3H Tree Service, they take out those trees with surgical precision. I highly recommend them. Tim got back to me. I texted him and said he needs to come on the show and give us a rant, because we haven't had a good Tim rant lately. But he's the owner of Tom and Gigs, where if you have any automotive needs, you can take care of that. They're in Coos Bay in the Empire neighborhood, right behind the car wash. And you can find them at 135 South Shoneman. Once again, that's 135 South Shoneman. And Tom and Gigs, I tell you what, they have a great selection of tonneau covers, side rails, bar lights, whatever you need. They got it there, and they can align your car, whatever mufflers you need. You want to put a muffler on, you want your car to sound like a truck, or you want your truck to sound like a car. Hey, they can do that. It's a great way. I guess Tim is into transitioning surgery. That's what he does for your car, not for people, but for your car. if your truck identifies as a car, take it to Tim and he can fix that muffler, and vice versa. So, wow, what a great idea. Tommy Giggs, 135 South Shoneman, in the Empire neighborhood, right behind the car wash. And of course, Herbal Choices, best dispensary in the county, hands down. I highly recommend Herbal Choices. If you got some of those herbal needs, go to Herbal Choices. They got 5 stores. They got one south of Bandon, beautiful store. I've been there many a times. Yeah, I was just picking up lunch, really. And you can go to South Bandon. You can go the North Lane on 101 in Coos Bay. They have an Herbal Choices. In North Bend, they have an Herbal Choices. Charleston, they have an Herbal Choices. And you can find an Herbal Choices in Reedsport. So I highly recommend it. 5 stores at your convenience. I think they got longer hours now. I think they expanded it, but they are open 7 days a week. But you got any of those herbal needs, Herbal Choices is your best place for cannabis. And of course, one of my favorite organizations, Oregon Firearms Federation. If you're not familiar with Oregon Firearms Federation, I suggest you get familiar with Oregon Firearms Federation, because Kevin Starrett, he is one badass dude who's been fighting against the people who want to take away your gun rights. There are people out there who want to destroy the Second Amendment. Kevin is working his best to keep that from happening. Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun organization in Oregon. Go to OregonFirearms.org. The website there is below at the screen, OregonFirearms.org. And please sign up for his alert. And if you got some extra money, please give Kevin some money, because boy, he spent a lot of money on all these lawsuits. He's been fighting against Measure 114. They spent a lot of money defending our Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance. They've done a lot more than, should we say, certain conservative political parties who are supposed to protect our gun rights but don't seem to be there. They're missing in action. What can I tell you? Oregon Firearms Federation, never missing in action. They're always there on the front line defending your Second Amendment rights. Now, they're not my sponsors, but I like to let everyone know, if you live in Bandon and you want to hone in your gun skills, you want to hone in your shotgun skills, try a 5-stand trap shoot. That's a beautiful thing to do at the Bandon Gun Club, bandongunclub.org. And they don't have a rifle range, but you know who does? Tioga Sports Park. And if you want to go to Tioga Sports Park, find out when they're open at tiogasportspark.org. And they've got a 100-yard rifle range where you can go out there, sight in your telescope. They've also got a pistol range as well. Really cool people over there at the Tioga Sports Park. Highly recommended. And that's just some of the things that are going on in my world and your world, and I hope you get in tune. Boy, it looks like I got a lot of comments here. Let's see, what do I got here? Let's see. Alex Bowser, they have been here for a while, Rob. Boy, that's an old comment. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I'll go along with it. Okay, they've been here. We'll agree with you. I think it will be a civil war. Gary, I think you're right. I don't think it's going to be a revolution. I think it's going to be a civil war, and I think another country will take advantage of our civil war and try to move into America and take over good swaths of this country. We got to be careful. I'm hoping for the best, though. I hope that we find a solution. I hope we come to our senses and realize we're just not doing it right now, and we need to do it better. Let's see. The people running Bandon are a good example of them. Yes, they are. The people running Bandon, I'm not sure. I think Chris Powell is the only Republican on the Bandon City Council. I'm not sure about that because they've got a few new members over the last couple of years. I'm not familiar with them. But they're a bunch of liberals. And the police here are, they're kind of leftist liberals too, The Corey, he's the chief of police. I think he's a well-intentioned guy, but he sure does pick the side of the homeless a lot. He's always talking about, we got to enforce the law, and if the law says screw you property owners, screw you property owners. Well, I don't agree with Corey on that. I think there are a lot of bad laws out there, and if there are cops out there who know there are bad laws, they don't have a duty to enforce them. No, they have police discretion, and they should choose not to enforce the bad laws. Oregon Outlaw says, none of it matters without voter integrity, I'm thinking. And you're right. That's what I'm worried about with the Trump election. We never really fixed all the voter integrity problems that we had in 2020, and those problems are still there, and they're going to happen again in 2024. That's why we got to beat the steal. It's the only thing we can do. There's only a certain percentage that they can cheat, and because there's only a certain amount of people, pool of people that have ballots that they can pull from. So I think we're going to have an interesting time in 2024, and I'm really hoping that Sonja, I hope she does a good job in the election, because she was a really interesting interview. This was a good interview. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me get the last couple of comments here. I am already feeling it. I have liberal relatives that despise me. Oh, well. Yeah, join the club. Join the club. I was just at a birthday party for a kid, and there were a couple of Democrats there. And they weren't like the crazy Democrats in Portland. They were like the Democrats who were, well, I'm a Democrat because my dad was a Democrat, but I still like to go shooting kind of Democrat. Well, they're not bad to talk to, but there are still some issues that, you just kind of glaze over. You don't want to talk about because, well, it's a family event. And even though we're Irish, we don't want to end up in a fight, which, kind of is an oxymoron, but what the hell? Let's see. Gary, you've got another comment. Canada is not a friendly neighbor. That's where most of my family is. LOL. Yeah, but if it came down to it, I think we could kick Canada's ass. By the time they get to Texas, Texas will roll over Canada. Yeah, there's a lot of space up in Canada. And I think that lack of a better word, they're a bunch of pansies up there, okay? All right, have you seen their flag? They're a bunch of pansies. Have you ever seen Dudley Do-Right? Dudley Do-Right should explain it right there. I mean, just saying, just putting that out there. So I'm going to have a really good show on Monday. I've got an expert on the windmills coming on next Monday. And that's going to be a recorded show because I couldn't get them on next Monday at the time the show is on. So I'm going to record that earlier in the week. And I'll play that next Monday for you guys, but that should be a really good one. But what I'm excited about is Friday night. Have the Friday night rant. We're going to do the Friday night rant at the Roseburg Fair. How do you like that? That's right. I'm hoping that I'll be able to walk around and I'm hoping I'll find the Republican booth and the Democrat booth so I can raise a little hell with both of them. That's going to be very interesting. So Friday night is going to be a really special show. I think it's going to be really kick-ass, so tune in, the Rob Taylor Report, and you guys know where you can find me. You can find me at robtaylorreport.com on my website, or, you can catch me on Rumble or YouTube or X right there. Like, share, and subscribe my stuff. Please, like, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I think if you enjoyed this interview, if you enjoyed what I'm doing here, I think you'll enjoy a lot of the different shows, and we might not always agree. There's a lot of things that we might not agree on, but I can guarantee you, I would bet you a $100, a C-note. I would bet you that at some point, if you don't agree with me now, that you'll agree with me somewhere down the road, because like I said, I'm not a typical Republican. I usually am more libertarian on most things, but that doesn't mean as an objectivist, I have to look at every issue on its own merits. So at some point in time, I think you'll agree with me. I don't know. That's what I like to think. Maybe I'm just very optimistic, being way too optimistic for an objectivist. I don't know. But you can catch me on YouTube at Rob Taylor Report, Rumble at Rob Taylor Report, and X at Rob Taylor Report. And like I said, please come to the meeting if you live in Coos County tomorrow, the commissioners meeting, 9 o'clock at the Owen Building in Coquille. And definitely check out the show next Friday night, for the Friday night rant. We're going to be live in Roseburg. And until then, carry on, America. Carry on.